Hi there, gang. Dr. J, Steve Jensen from the National Sales Academy and Impact Training. And today on our sales and business tips, I've got a young gun. In all my travels around the world, what I find is that quite regularly, I find people that are just excelling. And it's usually some of the new breed that are putting things and implementing things so incredibly well. And the gentleman I've actually got to actually work with us today and give you some actually golden nuggets is a young man that joined the SAC, and I met him a little while ago at one of the leisure centres in Melbourne. I'm really excited to be able to interview Shane Holt. Now, he is the sales leader. I call them leaders now because sales, we manage, process, and lead people, and this young man has done both. Now, I've been working at the Leisure Centre, which is managed by the YMCA for just over a year now, but he's been in sales for over 6 years. And I had an opportunity to have a good long deep dive chat with Shane around about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I was actually blown away of what this young man has done. He's gone into businesses which have had little to small amounts of turnover, and he's turned them around with actually managing, let's say, people, but also driving process. I'm going to get him to share some of his stories with you today because I can assure you some of the things he'll share with you will actually blow your socks off. And I'd like you to get your trusty pen out and write some stuff down, because I'm sure he's going to share some stuff with you that you can put into practice. So welcome, Shane. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Look, I always love talking to people that are implementers. And since you've actually been in the SAC and the Sales Authority Club, you've been one of the, let's say, the benchmarks on implementation and doing all the things well. Now, that comes from something. And you've created this ethos about yourself by doing sales for 6 years. Now, before we get into all of the nitty gritty, I'd love you to tell our listeners a little bit about you. So tell us a little about Shane.
All right. Well, I've had a lot of different jobs in my life. I grew up in the country, so about 3 hours away from Melbourne, and moved to Melbourne when I was 18. So back then I was actually a butcher. So I did a trade and I was butchering for about 7 years. After that, I was sort of finding my way. So I went into a lot of different industries, working at stadiums and in facilities, also just in warehouses, all kinds of things, selling power, customer service roles in call centers, things like that. Until I landed a job at a company called Closed Loop, where I really started to learn a lot about sales and management and things like that. I had studied management and business also. And during that time also, I found my passion, which is yoga. So I became a yoga instructor and meditation instructor also. So I've been doing that as well as sales and learning as much as I can along the way. And now about 12 months ago, I found myself here at the YMCA and I'm still learning so much, and it's really great. So that's a bit about who I am.
And some of the people you're working with, I've actually known for many, many years, and they're top of the tree with, Katina, and also with Nadine Kemp. She's a superstar in your industry, and our industry has been really blessed to have them stick around for a long time.
Definitely, yeah.
I'd love you to tell us about the business you're in now. The business that you're in now is quite a large business. You have a team of people. So tell us what the business is and what you actually do there.
Yeah, so I work at a leisure centre. So it's owned by the council and managed by YMCA. So we opened about 12 months ago now. So the 29th of October last year, we opened this centre. It was a brand new refurbished facility. So they spent $27 million on the facility. So in that time, we've been growing it pretty much like a brand new business. So my position here, I started out as a sales coordinator. So running all of the sales, putting together a sales team, and implementing all sales processes and training the staff. And from then, since 2 or 3 months ago, I moved into a new role, which now I manage customer service and the cafe, as well as sales too still. So continuing to run that team. And in that time, as the team's grown and people have gone on to other things. So it's very interesting, and to see how it's changed dynamics, and also having the SAC and learning all those kind of things and putting them in. So we sell gym memberships and pool. We have the pool, which is open for 7 months over summer. So we have those kinds of things, as well as group fitness. So we're sort of very fitness focused in selling memberships, but we also have the pool during summer. So we get a lot of income and revenue through that. But in terms of memberships, it's very gym and fitness focused. So very similar to a health club in that way.
Right. Now, In your other jobs beforehand, you went through a whole lot of processes, which actually you've brought into your industry. You say that you work with customer care, but also you work with the people that take telephone calls, make outward going calls. And in your other jobs as well, you were doing a lot of that. I recall you giving me some of the big results that you actually achieved in your other jobs. And just before we get into your fitness stuff, would you just tell the listeners about that fantastic story about when you went into that business and then started driving the process, but also managing the process with leadership, how you actually turned it around? And some of the numbers, guys, you'll listen to what Shane's going to say now, are quite staggering.
Well, I won't give any exact numbers because I don't want to throw anything out there that could be confidential. But when I started in the job I used to be at, which I was there for about 4 years, we began by we were selling events, cleaning and waste to events. And when we began there, it was a pretty small team. Still did continue to be a pretty small team, but the jobs we had just kept growing and growing. It did help having a pretty big client who were growing as well, and we got to grow with them. But we had nearly doubled and tripled their income and turnover in about 3 years. So it was probably triple over about 3-4 years of the income. And the work got so much that we had to get extra people for roles, and it ended up being such a big job that we weren't even expecting it, and it grew out to other areas of the world also. So that was pretty incredible to be a part of. And like you mentioned, I did learn a lot about process and how to implement process, building teams and managing teams through that role, which was something that I'd never been exposed to, and now I've been lucky to have done a few times now. So
given that you take it, say you went through that learning, what was one of the things that you think that made the biggest difference? Like, there's always usually a couple of things with, for instance, putting a process in place and then going to the other side of the equation when driving the people. So it's a people skill protocol. So there's always a dovetail. There's always one or two things that makes the difference. I'd love you to just share some of the things that you might have done with process, and then maybe one or two things that you did with skill sets, and then managing the people, what made the difference.
I think for process, for me, it was really putting together a strategy of like knowing where we're going and how we're going to get there, and then sharing that with the team. Because a lot of the time there was a bit of unknown where we were going, how we're going to get there and how we're going to manage that. It was like, we're getting too big for our shoes here. So like, we did want to grow, obviously, but it was knowing how we're going to get there and how we're going to manage it when we get to that point, and even what's to follow that and why we're doing it. Because you can say all these things of what we're doing, but everyone will want to know why. And if they don't know why, then they probably won't be on your side. So if you've got a clear understanding of where you're going, how you're going to get there and why, and how everyone's going to have their contribution to that and be rewarded in the process as well, I found that was the most effective way. So in terms of process, I found the strategy and having the most detailed strategy that you could, and sharing that and explaining it to the team was a really good way to have it. In terms of people, what I learned a lot about in my roles, and even still learn today, is how different people are. And when I first started in management, you have this assumption that a lot of people are the same, and you think you can treat everybody the same and they'll give you the same results, but it's definitely not true. It's so far from true. So I learned about, so I was treating everybody the same, and I was thinking I was going to get the same results, and some people were like doing terrible, some were amazing, and then I thought, oh, if I do the same thing that I'm doing with this person who's doing amazing with the people who are doing terrible, they'll do better, which wasn't true either. So really I learned that every individual is different. And in terms of leading a team, you really have to sit down with that individual and work out what their needs are and how you can like meet their needs, because some people don't need any support, some people need more support, all those kinds of things, to help them really succeed in their role. So I learned a lot about how the differences that are in people, and spending more time with people who are as individuals rather than saying people are a team collective and treating everybody the same. So in terms of that, which I'm still learning today, and from yourself, Steve, learning a lot about DISC, continuing to implement that and helping me be successful too.
Look, I hope the guys that listen to what you just said there, that's a golden nugget, guys. We can have a process. Now, we all got to understand, I think, Shane just said he had a strategy and he made it very clear on what the process was. Now, he would have taught them that, not just told them that. So you teach them the process. But I hope you heard that he said, well, we're not a collective. Sure, we have a collective goal, but everyone's an individual. So we have to make sure that everyone will have, let's say, skills in certain areas, but by spending quality time as a leader with the salespeople, so you can understand their strengths and their weaknesses to guide them to get the result. See, the outcome will come if the process is covered, but if you don't dovetail that with leadership skills, and you're correct, you can leave someone to their own devices, which are complete autonomous, and they'll love it. But if you mollycoddle that person, you'll actually break them, and they'll actually say, well, hang on a tick, you're over managing me. But there's others that want to have that support. So I hope you wrote that down, guys. Get that pen out and write that stuff down, because these are things that people talk about but don't do. They say, oh, I know that. So I'm going to get you to write down, how are you going to do that with your team? Now, if you're part of a team, how could you maybe have your team leader help you in this area? So let's go into now some of the, let's say, training that you've done. You talked about training and empowering. I've noticed over the last few months, you're a very, very strong advocate of action and practice, drill, rehearse. Some people call it role play. And we talked a little while ago about doing role play on the run, and you actually implemented that with some of your brand new people. You induct all your people, you empower them with skill sets. But with training, when you get a skill set, what's some of the things that you think are a really good way of getting the, let's say, the repetition, the utilization and implementation into your team as a culture? How have you done that?
So when I'll train new sales staff, or even continuing to train current sales staff, I'll put in I have like a lot of scripts written out. So they're very specific scripts as well. I like to break it up in sections. So I have each section. Obviously, you've got your introduction, you've got your rapport building, you've got your pitch, your price presentation, your close, things like that. And obviously you've got scripts for phone, outbound phone calls, inbound phone calls, walking tours, booked appointment tours, all of these scripts. I've got a lot of scripts. They're all laminated. I have them all sitting at the desk so everyone can see them and continue to read them. And what I'll do with when I'm training someone, I'll show them all these scripts. I'll go through it very slowly and break down why we're doing each thing and what it's about. So like I mentioned before, when you're putting a strategy together, to get people on your side, I find that the best way to do it is to explain why you're doing that thing. So when I'm training someone on a script, rather than just saying, this is a script, read it, we'll role play it and off you go. I like to really break it down in every point and say why we're doing each part of it, and let them ask questions about that as well, because everyone has a question, and then it's able to get them on board and to get them believing in the script and understanding why we do each part of that.
I'm going to jump in there. Let's say we're doing an outgoing call or an incoming call, or maybe even a needs analysis. What's one of the things that you teach them, and then explain the why about it? It could be like, you do the W's and all the other bits and pieces, you build rapport and so forth. What's one of the examples of a big rock that you do? And by the way, guys, I hope you wrote this down. Shane doesn't just tell people what to do. He breaks it into small chunks and practice, drill, rehearses that. And then before he does that, he tells them why. So he said, this is the process. Let me explain why we do it. And then he does his practice. He does it in small chunks, and then he creates a full flow. So keep that in mind. This is a great leadership and it's empowerment. I'd love you to give us an example of something that you train in, which is a big rock, and then you explain the why. And I'd love you to tell our listeners what that why is.
So I think the biggest one, which I really push, is in fitness industry, also in gyms, is the goal of the person who is going to be training, and then why they have that goal. So as we know, there's a pain point for everyone who walks into a gym. So what we want to find out is find out that pain point, and we want to learn as much as we can about that and that person. And what we're doing there is obviously how I would explain it when I'm training someone is we're trying to gain their trust. We're trying to find out what we need. A way I like to explain it to our staff is a bit of an empathetic or compassionate way to go about it, because people, well, especially the staff I'm training, they don't like to be really salesy. So I'm like, don't worry, this isn't very salesy. We're like the doctor. So people go to the doctor, they go there because they're sick. and they expect to get medication. So what we're doing is they're coming to us because, for a reason, whether we want to find out what that reason is. It's like you go to the doctor, you say you have a cough, you come to a gym, you say you want to get six-pack. So we're the same way. We treat it like that, and then we're going to be prescribing them exercise. So it's like when you go to the doctor, you get prescribed a medication and you go purchase that medication. So what we want to do is we want to learn as much as we can about what they're looking to achieve, and then we want to really help them to achieve that by prescribing them the programs, everything that we offer, because that's why we're here and that's what we're here to offer. So rather than putting it as a very salesy way, which a lot of people get put off by, I'll put it as way like you go to the doctor, you go there to get medication, they tell you what to get, you go and get it, and then you start on your way to getting better. Well, we're here, you tell us that you want to get a six-pack. Well, we can do that. Why do you want to get a six-pack? Well, I want it for summer. It's when I go down to the beach to show off for the ladies or whatever it is. And we're going to help you get that. But you need to obviously become a member to do that and speak to our personal trainers to get to that point. So when I explained it like that to the staff members, they changed the way that they deliver they deliver the rapport building in that way when they're finding out the goal, because they take it across to the customer and the prospect in that way as well, that we are here to help that person. So rather than selling them everyone a gym membership. So
no, it's absolutely correct. So we go from this selling mentality, and by the way, I think you've said another big rock here. We don't actually just go in and say, yes, this is what we have. We actually do a little bit of a deep dive, and I think you mentioned the word trust. Now, trust comes from actually, firstly, being having a perception of being an expert, but more importantly, there's a care factor where you're listening. In sales, and I think you've said this very well, you're asking lots of questions so the person will actually tell you the truth, but they won't tell you the truth unless there's a trust. So the other thing that I think that you've made very clear is to get permission to then make sure that you give them a solution. Don't just get out there and do a whole lot of talking. Ask questions, get the trust and empathy, and say, hey, it's like the doctor. You go to the doctor because you trust them. They go because there's a credibility. We have to create a credibility in, let's say, the fitness industry first by showing them expertise. So I hope you wrote that down, guys, because this is the guy that's actually doing it. He's got quite a large team. He's actually inducted a few new people. I'd love you to share us a little story of one of your new people I remember you saying there was a role play on the run that you did, and it was pretty good, but there was a couple of little things that needed to be tweaked. And tell them what that was and what actually happened afterwards.
Yeah, so one of my staff came to me, the new sales staff. So she's been doing it for about 3 weeks last week, and she's been having some trouble closing. And I was and I've done a lot of role plays with her on the tour and everything like that, and from doing them at the beginning, and I hadn't done it for probably a week and a bit. I role play with her. She's still doing some shifts learning. So I was like, she's come to me and she said, I'm really having trouble closing. I'm like, oh, where do you think you're going wrong? And she's like, I think it might be in the price presentation. I'm like, that's great. Well, show me your price presentation. So she showed me her price presentation. And there was a lot of uncertain words in there. Maybe this, like, do you think this? All these kinds of words. So the first thing I said to her is you need to start changing maybe the language and the words that you're using. The price presentation was amazing, the way it was set out and the way it was written down, but it was a lot of the language that was in there. So I took her through a price presentation the way that I would do it. And I said, start to adopt some of that language that I used and changing maybe with like, this is the price. Maybe you think that maybe this price will suit you, saying this is the price of the membership. So just changing those little bits, little words. Like there was only 1 or 2 of them in there, but it made the person, would possibly make that person uncertain about getting a membership. You're giving them an out pretty much to just say, oh, I'm going to think about it. So we did a couple more role plays and she got it down really fast actually. Within about 2 more role plays, she actually had changed that language completely. But what I noticed following that is her tone was like went very high at the end of every single thing. So at the end, so she would say, this is the Oak Park membership. And they're like, and it would go up like that. And when I called her out, she was a bit embarrassed, and I did feel a bit bad. But I explained it to her, and then she became like really hyper aware of it. So she did another price presentation for me, and she was still doing it, but she would laugh, and she was aware that she was doing it. So so I got to do a couple more, and I was like, don't worry, you're going to be aware of it now. So the more you do price presentations, you'll know that you're doing it, because this is the only time she does it. Very confident person. She's a high D. So so I was very surprised to see that she had that in her price presentation. But that gave the impression that she wasn't sure about what she was talking about. So I explained to her about what she's doing and the impact it can have on the sale. And after the language had changed, obviously. And that person, and how it can possibly make them feel unsure by having their tone go up like that. So obviously we just want that tone to be delivered more stronger, even if it can maybe go down towards the end. So you're really clear about this is, it's $20 a week, so it's clear, not $20 a week, so she went away. Actually, she came back in 2 days later, and she wasn't doing a sales shift. She was doing a customer service shift, but I came out straight away. I said, give me a price presentation. And she wasn't expecting it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, she said this morning when I was coming to work, I knew that you were going to do this. She was like, I was hoping you weren't, but I knew you would. Most people don't like role plays, obviously, but I love them. But and she did one, and it was really, really good. So there was still 2 points where the tone did go up, but she'd obviously was really clear on thinking about it, and you could see that she'd almost practiced it, maybe practiced it in her head, but still it had happened. And she said that she feels even more confident now delivering it. Now she knows this. So very specific details in a price presentation role play, but I like to really break apart things and find out how people can improve, even if they're little specifics. And they're things you can't really train in a big training session. So they're very specific.
Absolutely correct. Guys, I hope you stop the video and just re-scrub what Shane has just said. What he said is actually, a lady came to him and said, I have a challenge. What he did, he then reverse engineered it. He found out some of the words. Now, just at the wrap up there, what Shane was just saying is that those words are sometimes, the price presentation was beautifully written out, but the words actually were killing it. So they extracted the words, but he didn't say just don't do that. He then did the practice on eliminating the words. Did you hear what he said? He said, I showed her what to do, and then she did a few role plays, and she very quickly took them out. But then he was going through the presentation again, and I hope you heard this. This is leadership. It's also empowerment. He then said, there's a few things with your tone. And the tone goes up. It also shows, let's say, an incongruency and possibly a pleading. He said it'd be better if you have the tone go down. And now he made that front of mind. He made a conscious decision to actually do that. And guess what he did? A few days later, he did a role play on the run to do it again. This is called reinforcement of the repetition, which helps in utilization. There's no wonder, Shane, that you're getting some great results with your new crew, and they're just blossoming under your leadership. And it's really great to see that from a leadership point of view, you're taking a process, you're trusting the process, because then the outcomes will take place. Now, guys, I'm going to share something with you. This young man has been driving his team and helping a lot of customers get started, and he has never missed a budget since we've been working together. And sometimes he smashes his target. And he's had some people, they have some casual staff come and go, and he also inducts them. This is actually a testimony of him working the process, but also working with leadership. So Shane's sharing some golden nuggets with you, which make an enormous difference. If you'll just take 2 or 3 of these things away and implement them in your team or with yourself, it'll make a big difference. Now, I always like to go to the other end. That was a success. I'd love you to tell us, and it's always we learn from mistakes. I'd love to find a big mistake that you made or you're doing in your own personal sales that you did or you've seen your team doing, that you've actually picked it up. Now, we had an example of the tone and the words. I'd like to say a big one, something that you see come up quite regularly, and what you did to rectify it and what the outcome was.
Yeah, well, this is one that it's come up a lot of times actually, and it still continues to happen. So it's probably our show rate on when we're booking appointments. And this is one that it came up earlier in the year, and it's come up a couple of times since then. Now, when it first came up, I knew a process to sort of go about it. So when earlier in the year, we were booking a lot of appointments, which was really great. But the show rate, we were getting like only 2 out of every 10 show up. So, and we were selling well still, so we were still lucky that those 2 that showed up, we were closing. And also we're getting a lot of walk-ins. But it was a lot of time spent on the phone booking appointments that was getting wasted, because you're booking 10 appointments and only 2 showing up. Well, those 8 people you've spoken to and booked in, you've sort of wasted that time even calling them and booking them in. So I was like, well, what can I do to help change this? And, you know, it's a bit disheartening when you see that your show rate's 20%. So, and I was making a lot of calls at the time too. So, and so even some of my appointments weren't showing up. So it wasn't everyone, and it wasn't just the team, it was myself too. So what I put in was a A1, A2, A3. So the team hadn't been trained on this. They didn't know it. It wasn't something we had in place. This is back at the very beginning of the year when we had this. And so A1 was an appointment booked for today, A2 was tomorrow, and A3 was everything past that. And I pretty much said, I want to see 0 A3s booked. What we were getting was a lot of appointments booked on a Monday for Saturday. And yeah, that was why they weren't showing up, because, you know, it's Saturday, it's too far away. By the time it gets there, they're like, oh, I'm not going to go. Or something comes up. So I said, if they want to book on Saturday, that's fine, but call them on Friday to book them in for tomorrow, for the next day. So then I gave rewards for the people who booked the most A1s and A2s at the end of the month. So that the very first month I said, book the most A1s and A2s, you'll get a reward for this. So that really drove the team to start booking A1s and A2s. And they were like, how can I book an appointment for today? You know, they were confused at first. So I did give a bit more training on the actual appointment booking in the outbound script in that very end, just that little part, just tweaked the script a little bit, gave people that 2-choice thing, you know, are you available to come down this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow morning? And then the 2-time thing, you know, we are pretty busy, but we've got some time at 3 o'clock or 4:30 if you're free. So just the 2 choices. And then everybody, pretty much the whole team. And as I did that example too myself, it made our show percentage go all the way up to like 70% in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy just to start seeing people show up for their appointments. And potentially that still had that impact where if someone wanted to book for Saturday, well, they weren't booking them. They were saying, great, well, I'll give you a call on Friday to confirm you for tomorrow, and we can book it in then. So I'll just pencil you in just tentatively at the moment, and we'll lock it in on Friday. And they said when they call back, they'd say, oh yeah, some of them actually came in on the Friday, or some of them came in on the Sunday, but it made that person more urgency for that appointment at the time. So that was probably one of my biggest issues, continues to still come up. So I think that it's a continuous training in that alternative choice. As I've watched calls happen, I noticed that people start to go back to the old scripting and they start to be like, oh, are you free this week at all? Rather than going are you available to come down today or tomorrow? So getting that urgency scripting going and keeping that, you know, we have some really great deals available, better to come down sooner than later so you don't miss out. So really changing the wording, because very quickly, especially on outbound calls when they're making a lot of calls a day, they quickly go off script and start saying their own things. So watching the calls and continuing to role play the calls. And the best thing about is it only takes a minute or 2. So it's very fast to call role play, where like a tour takes a while. So that's probably what has to continue to happen, just training on the A1s and booking that urgency of booking the appointment. So it is still an issue. I did have very poor show rate last week. So something that I'm continuing to work on.
Well, I hope you guys are listening to what Shane's saying. He said, oh, my show rate last week wasn't that great, but I've actually fixed it. See, he's actually measuring his numbers on a daily basis and a weekly basis. We actually have a regular catch-ups on Monday, and we go through a few strategies and so forth, and we have a weekly conversation just to check in how things are going. And this young man always knows his numbers and always has a strategy to sort it out. But I'm just going to backtrack here for a moment. He mentioned A1s, A2s, and A3s. A1 is actually when someone actually calls or sends a web inquiry on a day, and we contact them within that 24 hours and book them in to come in on that day. It's a statistic that has been quite new, and Shane's implemented. A1s and A2s have, a 100% higher close rate and show rate on the day that they inquire if they come in on the day. Day 2 is after that 24 hours. So as a leader, he measured that and started saying, well, this is what we need to do. And then the guy said, well, we don't know what to do. So he then tweaked the script and then did the role play and then put it into play. And guess what? He did it himself. And then that means that he said, oh, I'm just not just saying you got to do it. He actually did the practice and put it into play. He then also went back and tweaked up the prompt. Wasn't just telling people what to do, and then measured it and went from 20 to 70% show, given that their closing percentage is high. Hope you're listening to that, because that's actually is gold, because so many sales managers or people that are in sales don't measure their stuff on a daily and weekly basis. What Shane's done, he's found his numbers, gone to the source, and then changed it and made a massive difference. And I'm sure it made a big difference in the confidence of the people too. So that was an absolute golden nugget again, mate. You're actually giving lots of great stuff to all of our listeners. They're going to be very appreciative. Hope you're putting this into play, guys. It's not just about us chatting away. Now, we're working together for about, a good 3-4 months now. And, you have us been exemplary in implementation. Let me share with the guys from the Sales Authority Club, we call it the SAC. What is maybe 1 or 2 things that have really helped you along the way to actually getting the results you're getting at the moment?
The main things I'd probably say is on the calls that we have every week, that you give me the golden nugget, Steve. So, as when we catch up and we talk a bit of everything. We sometimes go off on a tangent, but in those tangents, you really give me a lot of golden nuggets. And what I've found is like a lot of ways to improve my leadership with the team. So the main thing I'd probably say is that overall, my leadership and confidence in leading the team has improved, and the way that I share different numbers and reward the team based on those kinds of things. So that's probably the big golden nugget, the biggest thing that I've got from the SAC and the training, the implementation training, all of these things from being involved. Would definitely be like my leadership skills have improved massively, and only in 3 to 4 months I feel like I can lead the team more effectively, and I can really be involved and be a part of the team even more than I was before. So I feel like I'm one of them, in amongst them. So which is great. So which is what it's really been good.
Terrific. And you've actually, as I said to the guys at the beginning, you've been exemplary in actually following through. You do your weekly the 60-second email. We have our check-ins. You actually fill out your plan for the beginning of the week, and you like doing that to reviews your bits and pieces. And you're highly participative in the training. You bring some of the guys down from Melbourne, so you're an implementer. And this is one of the things I'm finding with all of the people that we work with, whether it's in-house or in the SAC. The implementers are the ones that are, in other words, just do the work and trust the process. And you've done a fabulous job in that area. So it's no wonder you've been so successful. I'm sure there's lots more to come. And I'd love you just to share from a Shane Holt's perspective, one big rock skill set or management or something that they should learn or do from your perspective, just one thing that they should do to make sure they have success and make, say, 2020 their best ever.
Well, I think this is something that you showed me, and it's something that has given me a lot of success, not just in sales now, but in my personal life and everything I do. And that would be DISC, because the self-awareness that comes with DISC, and knowing where you fall under DISC and how you can have better relationships with people, your staff, everybody, like your friends, your family, everything that you're doing in life. DISC has been very helpful for myself. So to say to everyone out there, if you don't know what DISC is, jump online, Google a DISC test and do it, and then look into what you are under DISC, because the self-awareness and learning about who you are in DISC behaviors and the behaviors that you'll fall into naturally. And in conversations, the words that you'll use, things like that. And then being aware of also the words that other people use and how you can really use that, not always to your advantage, but to build stronger relationships. So in a way, you are using it to your advantage, but you're building stronger relationships with your team, with prospects, with clients, with your family, your friends, with everything. I'll be just at a party and I can use DISC to know who I am and see what other people are, and I can create a stronger relationship with somebody who I've just met based off knowing what DISC they are and what DISC behaviors they have and I have. So if there's anything you can do, it's learn a bit about DISC before 2020, and I think it'll help you with every part of your life, with work, with everything, because from what I've learned from you, Steve, about DISC, and I did know a bit before, but it's really helped me a long way. And having that self-awareness of knowing what I am and how those behaviors impact the work that I do and the things that I do within my team and my personal life has helped me in so many ways, given me a lot of confidence and helped me grow actually a lot and continue to grow. So, and something that I like to give to my team to take into their personal lives and their professional lives for the future too, as I do have a pretty young team. So I'd probably say if there's something to take, and that's probably something that I'd say, which has been a huge part of this year for me, will probably be one of the biggest learnings that I've got, and something that will help me for years to come.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, mate. And it's all about relationships, and it's you, Proprietary Limited, and how you modify it. So you've implemented incredibly well. And I love the way you say, well, it's good for you, but you've imparted it to your team. Look, Shane, it's actually been a delight chatting with you. As I said, we could go on for hours as we normally do. But if people wanted to follow you and just be a friend or whatever, how could they connect with you on LinkedIn or possibly Facebook? Is there anything that they can see what you're doing? Because I'm sure they're really interested to see and monitor your success and see what you're doing.
Yeah, the best way to see what I'm up to is jump onto LinkedIn, Shane Holt, obviously. So jump on and look me up and connect with me on LinkedIn. I do post a bit on there. I'm trying to be as active as I can. If you want to see what I'm up to here at Oak Park or other things that I'm doing, jump onto LinkedIn and connect with me there. Also on Instagram and things like that. But to see what I'm doing professionally and in the sales area, jump on there and have a look.
Terrific. Well, guys, wasn't that great? A young gun doing the damage. Isn't it interesting? He takes a process, he empowers his people, and then he follows it through with a practice drill rehearse. But, I'm sure you heard it a few times. He said, oh, look, I needed to do this myself. And he works as hard on himself as he does on his people. So golden nuggets galore. I hope you take an action. Write some things in the comments. And if you want to connect with Shane, get him on LinkedIn and see what the great man's doing. So again, thanks a lot, Shane. And guys, I'd love you to make sure that you connect with Shane and put some things in action. Action is everything. All right, guys, have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch up with you real soon. Dr. J, signing off. Bye for now.